Hey, good morning, boys and girls. Mr. Wade here to walk you through the next lesson in our catechism series. Today we're going to begin a series of two lessons that we introduce to you the two main teachings of the Bible. And we're talking about teachings, what we want to learn. And I know your parents do that for you. What have your parents taught you? Well, they've taught you to say please and thank you. They said wash your hands before you eat so you don't get sick, brush your teeth so you don't have all kinds of gum problems and dental problems down the road. And so they teach you these things for your health and for your safety. Well, guess what? In the Bible, God does the same thing. And there are two main teachings. Today we're going to learn the first one. It's the law. And then on Thursday, we're going to learn the second one. It's called the gospel. You've probably heard of the law and the gospel before. Today, we're going to learn the law. This is all that stuff dealing with us being naughty. So, why did God have to give us the law? The law, of course, is the 10 Commandments, which we'll talk about in a minute. Well, it all started, and I'm looking at my slide here, Genesis 3, verses 1 to 6. The first sin. You and I know what sin is. Sin is being naughty. What was the very first sin? Well, it all started in the Garden of Eden, way back at the beginning of created time, with Adam and Eve. And Adam and Eve were created perfect. They were, Bible says, in the image of God. They never did anything naughty. Okay? Everything around them was perfect. They never got sick. They never had any troubles. They never had to worry about anything because there was no sin. But then that dastardly devil came to Adam and Eve in the form of a snake. We know the rest of the story. Made them question what God had said, and then they went ahead and took a bite. They took a bite out of their food. Excuse me about that phone call. Let me get back to what I was saying. Adam and Eve unfortunately disobeyed God when they ate fruit from the tree that God had forbidden them to eat. And right at that second, when they disobeyed God, everything changed. Everything changed. They were created in the perfect image of God, and that perfect image of God was now lost. They realized they were sinful. Now, man changed, but remember what I said the other day? God never changes. Well, boys and girls, that's an important truth that we're going to be talking about today, what God expects of us. And we're going to get to that in a moment. I just want you to look at the Bible verse up on the top. It says, Adam answered God, God, I heard you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid. There's proof right there that things had changed. Before they sinned, they were naked, but they never worried about it. They weren't self-conscious at all. Once again, their life was perfect. And so after they sinned, like one of the things that changed was they realized they got self-conscious and they tried to cover themselves up with fig leaves, and they were actually hiding from the very God who loves them so much. Anyway, things had changed in this world. And Leviticus 19, verse 2, our next verse on your slide, this is what God says. Be holy, because I, the Lord your God, am holy. Oh, no. Holy means perfect. And Adam and Eve messed it up for us and for themselves. No longer would any human being be born perfect. Every human being is born the sinful nature. Okay? And so, boys and girls, We're studying the law today, and we need to understand what it means to be perfect. Because a lot of people say, well, I'm pretty good. I'm not such a bad person. God must like me. And they don't really understand the Ten Commandments, the law that God gave. I wrote the Ten Commandments down there for you. I'll tell you what. First commandment says, don't worship anything but God. That's called idolatry. Well, a lot of people worship money. A lot of people worship power. Second commandment, honor God's name. I'm sorry. We all break that commandment. Anytime we misuse God's name, like if somebody says, oh, Christ, well, that's misusing his, his glorious name. Third commandment, worship regularly. A lot of people skip church or never learn God's word on a regular basis. They ignore God in that way. That's a sin. Fourth commandment, honor those in authority. Have you ever talked back to your teacher or your parents? Of course. um, we can't keep that commandment perfectly. The fifth commandment, don't hurt others. Excuse me, people push, people hit, people say nasty things. That's an impossible commandment to keep. Sixth commandment, this was really more for adults, but this one deals with sexual sins. Seventh commandment, don't steal. Well, I know you're not in school right now, but sometimes you're sitting taking a test and you're sitting there um, looking at your neighbor's paper and stealing an answer and writing it down on your paper. That's impossible for us to keep as well. Eighth commandment, protect people's reputation, it says here. That means that we never gossip, we never say bad things about anyone behind their back. Excuse me, we all have trouble with that. And then the ninth and tenth commandment, don't covet. That means be content with what God has given you instead of always being so envious and so jealous of other people that have maybe nicer things than us. Those are God's requirements, boys and girls, and we don't do so well. So I'm going to go to the next slide and keep moving here. The next slide says, no one will be declared righteous in his sight, in God's sight, by observing the law. We know we can't keep God's law perfectly, so we're not going to be declared righteous. We're not going to be eligible to go to heaven by ourselves. Rather, why did God give us the law? To become conscious of sin. Boys and girls, I don't know about you, but I've got this little buzzer inside my ear called my conscience, and when I do something wrong, when I do something naughty, my conscience tells me. You know what happens, what a lot of people do when their conscience tells them they did something wrong? They lie about it. Then they've got another thing put on their conscience. Now they've done something naughty and they've lied about it. And our conscience just doesn't, you can't just turn it off. It's always there. And so our conscience reminds us that we are not perfect, that we've got a sin problem. Let's look at Lauren. I think Lauren thinks she's pretty good. Lauren says, I go to East Fork Lutheran and I try my best to obey my parents and teachers. Surely God looks favorably upon me. She was kind of patting herself on the back and saying, I'm a pretty good girl. But boys and girls, pretty good is not perfect. Look at Johnny. Johnny says, I don't talk dirty or lie or smoke cigarettes like some of my friends. Surely God must like me more than them. Johnny, that may be true, but there's other commandments that you break too. You're not perfect any more than I am. And God doesn't look any more favorably upon you, Johnny, than he does anybody else. Look at what Sadie says. Sadie says, every Saturday I help my grandma clean her house and I help mom do the wash. I'm sure God likes me. Guys, we don't compare ourselves with others and we only look at what God says. And we may be better than others by being more helpful, like with grandma or with mom. But there's plenty of things that we say and think and do wrong, every single day. And God doesn't like sin. And that's really one of the main reasons God gave us the law, His Ten Commandments, to help us. It's like a mirror. We look in the law and we say, uh-oh, I don't like what I see. I break a lot of those commandments. I'm not such a great person. I have a sin problem, and God's not going to be happy with me. And you know what? You're right. Thankfully, on Thursday, I get to take you through the second main teaching of the Bible. And that's called the gospel. And gospel means good news, and we'll get into that next time. But I've got some really good news for you because our sin problem has been taken care of. Stay tuned, boys and girls. Always keep working on learning those 10 commandments. Okay? I can't ask you to memorize them now. If you were in school, we would be memorizing them, but we always keep them in our minds and in our hearts because we always want to please God with our actions. And we'll talk more about the second main teaching of the Bible on Thursday, the gospel, the good news. In the meantime, stay well, stay smart, and be a good helper at home, mom and dad. Talk to you soon.